Appreciate you. Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille show. It's Jerry Miller. It's good to be with you, and we have a fantastic program lined up. Sean Simmons, the CEO and founder of Greenberrys Coffee Company, our guest. I'm so excited to welcome this man to the program. He is truly a Charlottesville, Central Virginia success story. His brand, global. We will talk about the global expansion, the domestic expansion of Greenberrys Coffee with Sean himself. We also want to thank Scott Wagner, Dr. Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine for being a good part of this program. Also, the fine folks at Cameron Limousine. When you guys are getting around town for the vineyard and brewery tours, Bill and Sherry Kerr at Cameron Limousine is who you give a call to. On that note, Judah behind the board makes us look good. We will go to the two-shot, and we will welcome Sean Simmons to the program. We already have people on the cast. Sean, thanks for joining us.
Sure. How you doing, Jerry?
We are doing great. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I think your success story in business and in coffee is astonishing. It's the stuff that dreams are made of, and it's the time of life where entrepreneurs and business owners are celebrated by shows like Shark Tank. So your story is contagious. It builds confidence in people, and it spreads. So we want to put in perspective the success of Greenberrys. The first question I have for you is, you come to Charlottesville, Virginia, not even married.
True.
Choose to launch a business with your wife. So you get into a field where 80% of businesses fail in their first 3 years, and then you add your wife into the mix to it as well.
Sure.
Put it in perspective.
I think she added me, actually. So.
Put it in perspective
The real boss, exactly. Well, it's actually a funny story. We were exposed to Charlottesville because my family had already lived here. My father had moved here a number of years before, so we'd spend Christmases here and stuff, and fell in love with it like everybody does. It's a great town. But we were at that point, my wife and I came out of school, we went to work for big companies like everybody does, realized very quickly that wasn't for us, and then she and I both kind of went in. She went into the healthcare, and I went into the restaurants and food service, but we kind of got to that point where most people do early in the career to say, I can do this, and I can do it better. So we decided to launch our own business, and I had some aces in my back pocket. Through family connections, knew some really great people in the coffee industry. So to be able to basically pull a team together, people that had been doing it for a very long time, some of them quite famous in my industry, and just pull together their ideas with our zeal and wanting to create something for ourselves, made it happen. And that was back in 1991, 92, a long time ago.
91, 92, guys, and something we need to clarify here. This is 25, 26 years ago, 27 years ago. Crazy right there.
Yeah.
Coffee was not how we know coffee today.
No.
Coffee then was, do you want your coffee black or with some cream? It was not craft coffee, Sean.
Right. No, and I always tell at this point a very funny story. We literally were at opening day. And we were full of excitement, had no idea what was going to happen. And you're right. The first couple of months were nerve-wracking for us because people didn't understand what a coffee shop was. It's hard for us to imagine today, but Starbucks was only as far as Chicago, and we're still a pretty small company. And so people in Charlottesville really didn't have much of a sense of what we were all about. And my wife, who was much more of a wreck about what was going on than I was at the time, was in the shop, and this very nice lady who I think worked in one of the Barracks Road Shopping Center stores.
I love this story. Yeah.
At the time, she comes over, and she meant well, bless her heart, but she comes over and hugs my wife and says, honey, you're going to have to just sell more than coffee to make it. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, okay. But have you been to California lately? Have you seen what's coming? And she kind of exemplified that at the time she didn't understand. The great ending to the story, though, was she was a customer for a very long time.
Sure.
And so she got it after a while.
I got to give you some props because I feel like a lot of successful entrepreneurs, we have this innate ability of seeing ahead of the market or where things are going. Mm-hmm. You were a man that I think when describing you, I would say a man of vision is one of your character descriptions. And I think you saw that the market was going west to east. you had a chance to get ahead of it in a college town where really there wasn't a ton of competition at the time.
True.
And then
Very
you
true.
had the operation skill set from your time running Subways, I believe.
Right.
Was it Subways
Right.
in the Pennsylvania area?
Yes, yeah.
In the Pennsylvania area. So you
Right.
learned a tremendous amount of operational, like, infrastructure skill set
Right.
that you then could apply to this brand.
Right. Well, there's two things that were very helpful to me. One was having a father who had been successful in business, and he was in the big corporate world environment in healthcare. But he instilled in me and Roxanne, no matter how small you are, run your business with the structure and organization of a big company. Do your budgets, pay attention to what you're doing, have discipline, have procedures. Most small businesses just don't do that. And I'm not criticizing them, but winging it is not a management strategy.
Right, because it's not prioritized.
Right.
You know, like a lot of times small business owners are just like, what fire do I have to put out today? Where you're working like on your business instead of in your business.
Right. No, and I'd rather decide where I'm going to set the fire and control it as opposed to
reacting.
have it. Exactly. Yeah. So I had that influence from my father. You're right. I was very successful with Subway back in the day, but the other piece of it was Subway gave me structure specifically in the F&B environment, food and beverage. So their model actually transferred over to my shop very well in terms of the things you don't see, how to manage inventory and stuff like that. So we started off with a nice, good business background, structured environment. But I think I always tell people in my business, it's not the coffee. It's the environment you create in the store. People want to come in. Coffee's like the oil in the machine. It needs to be good, but it's not just that. It's the magic that goes on in a coffee shop, like you and I talking right now. People come in, they talk, they have their meetings, they socialize. That's the beauty of a coffee store. So I'm setting that stage for them, and I'm putting the oil in the machine and feeding them some food and stuff like that. But it's that platform that attracts our customers.
And I would say your coffee shop is the pinnacle of the profession in the market. I mean, it's safe to say, and I can say that because it's been backed by longevity. Businesses with longevity, I mean, that speaks for itself. Put in perspective, entrepreneurs, I think, oftentimes are afraid to pivot, or they're afraid to say, all right, this strategy didn't work. I was wrong here. Is that what you thought with Subway when you were running the Subways in Pennsylvania? Because I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, a conversation we had over coffee was like, the Pennsylvania market was so difficult because the sand. Talk to me why. I mean, was it something to do with them having an affinity for the local steak and cheese? What was it?
Well, yeah. This is the fun thing that every entrepreneur at some point in their career will run across, which is, boy, did I really screw that idea up, or boy, did I really make a mistake. And that my philosophy when I joined Subway was, well, I'm going to go to the heart of hoagie land. In downtown Philly, the cheesesteak and the hoagie is the dominant food choice there. And so I said, well, and I had already been bestowed by Subway that we were the best and we had the best product. So I'm like, well, I'm going to bring the best hoagie
to the hardest part. The most competitive.
To the heart of it. And these people are just going to fawn all over us and love us to death. No, they resoundingly disliked the Subway product because it was not their product.
Right.
Philadelphians are very serious about this. So my first foray wasn't very good. And I was right there outside of the main line of Philly. But my pivot, which allowed me to become successful, was I actually left the Philly market and went up to the Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton market, which is about an hour and a half north.
Yeah.
Those people, although they enjoy Philly football, really try to distance themselves from Philly culture. And up there, I made a go of it. And I was successful, and that's what launched my career that worked for them. And then I continued to populate stores in other parts of Pennsylvania.
Sure, and the reason I brought this up, Sean, was multiple reasons. Reason number one is that experience gave you the foundation for the success for Greenberrys. And that experience, did it motivate you to launch a brand that you created from scratch that was local?
Yeah, well, what we understood was that putting pieces together, we had the expertise backing us, which we needed. We felt like we had a good grasp of the retail delivering customer service environment from our own experiences, sound business background with our team. We knew we had a great product, and we knew that coffee, even in 1992, was a part of human existence.
Sure.
I mean, we all, even back then, you wake up every day and have a cup of coffee. So I knew the core product was there, not going anywhere. What I did have to do in the first 2 years was wait for the market to catch up with the idea a little bit. And those first 2 years were painful. But what we saw and what kept us going, which sometimes entrepreneurs need this boost, is we kept looking at our sales trends. And they were skyrocketing. Even though we were negative, we were losing money in the beginning, we looked at the trend lines. And I remember having a very important meeting where there were some in my group that were ready to throw in the towel, and the rest of us were like, but wait a minute, if we just keep doing exactly what we're doing for another 6 months, we're going to become profitable. And if this keeps going 10 years, 20 years, look where those numbers go. And in the end, that's what happened.
Did you have an aha moment? I mean, you talked about the sales trends and the trends justifying you guys were on track, but was there a moment where it's like, this is a business, I totally see it? And I'm also going to ask you, was there that moment where you're like, man, I might throw in the towel myself here and like run for the hills?
Yeah.
Because I feel like entrepreneurs have those constantly.
Well, I mean, it is. It's extremely hard to run your own business. And you do have sleepless nights and you have euphoria. That all comes along the way. I'm very fortunate that I'm an optimist. So you have to pound me pretty hard to get me thinking negatively. So I think I always believed in it, and I knew it was going to be a success. You go into these things, you have to have a force of nature behind you. And what I've always said to myself is, we will do what it takes to make this a success. Failure is not an option. And that was our attitude, and we kept at it. And you do. Sometimes you look for other ways to survive until you hope the wave comes. And I know you and I were talking a little bit. In the early days, one of those things that helped us as we were waiting for the retail to come along was the wholesale trade. And yeah, I mean, I was roasting coffee in the McIntire Business Park. And Roxanne was driving around her Honda Civic making deliveries.
I love that story.
And that was a way that we paid the bills, and we were making money. And it also, we didn't really realize this, but it was also feeding the retail store because we were extending the brand.
Of course.
So, all those things, and it's just, you have to have that determination.
The retail and the roasting are almost two separate businesses, but they're vertically integrated to complement each other, obviously. I mean, the roasting is such a separate business than having a barista slide a cup of coffee to a customer in your store.
It is.
How are those businesses, how have you mastered both? How do they complement? When did you realize that you needed both? You couldn't outsource the roasting. Why not outsource the roasting to make it easier to begin with?
Well, the people that taught me the business, Alfred Pete and Jamie Anderson, were coffee roasters, always at their heart. That's what they did. So it was never a question whether or not we would supply ourselves.
So the mission from day one was we're roasting.
It was, always, because we felt like control the quality, control the pipeline, but also, quite frankly, have another source of profitability because we weren't going to pay someone else to roast for us. So, and then I had those gentlemen who I just mentioned were able to teach me how to roast, what kind of equipment to buy, and how to go about it.
So the best in the world, teaching you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I consider those two gentlemen in my industry to be two of the giants.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And with the roasting piece, was it much harder for you? Because with the retail piece, you had the F&B experience from Subway. You already knew it. It was like, this is what I have to do to be successful. How about the roasting side? It's like a different side of the brain, isn't it? It
is, but in many ways it's easier. I mean, once you know how to do it, retail is, as everyone knows, it's been a part of it, it's a grind. It's hard. Every day, the conveyor belt, customers are coming in and they want you to be on your game and everything. So I always, anyone that has ever worked with us and managed one of our stores, I give them so much credit because it is a hard job to do in and day out. So I think that's harder than roasting. A roasting machine is predictable and you're not serving customers directly.
You don't have hangry customers.
No,
right?
No, you don't.
The roasting machine, it doesn't have a mood.
No, well,
I guess it could have a mood.
They do. They like to catch fire from time to time and cause problems. Every roaster in the world will know what I'm talking about. But no, I mean it's a different business, but they're complementary to each other.
When you launched the business with the roasting piece, and we have a lot of people on the stream here. Keely, thank you for joining us. Lauren, thank you for joining us. Cameron Wells Marsh. Clay, thank you for joining us. Dave, thank you for joining us. Andre Xavier, Robert McCory, Jennifer, Quentin, Jason, people like your brand. There's a lot of people watching us here. Let me throw this to you here. When you launched the business almost 27 years ago, did you know that the roasting piece was going to be a back-end revenue stream with your franchisees, or did you just launch it thinking, I have to control my product, and there's no better way to control my product than me making the product myself?
When we first launched the business, the roasting was specifically to support my retail stores. Mm-hmm. That was all. We actually, in our early business plans, did not plan on selling our coffee to any great extent to anyone else in town. The requests started coming in, and we certainly didn't say no to it. But the evolution of the roastery as its own business model happened much later. Yeah. Much more in line with when we looked to do some expansion through franchising and licensing. Where we started to realize that, this really is getting large enough that it could be its own business.
Well, that's what I love about you is like, I really appreciate that you are always willing to pivot, change, try new things, and you have a really good eye for opportunity, and you have an eye for filling opportunity. And I mean, I see that with, say, like the Costco deal, which we will talk about, and I see that with the roasting, because you basically had folks coming into your store saying, we want to sell this coffee, and when enough people come to you and do that, I mean, that's like opportunity knocking, and you're like, I got to figure out how to meet this, right? Yeah,
and you know, again, over 27 years, there's so many differences in terms of where we are, what's going on in the market today versus back then. I was very fortunate up until 2001. I won't say we were the only game in town, but there were very few people in the coffee roasting or cafe business.
Who got into it? Who got into it where you're like, okay, there's some other fish coming in?
The 2001 date is important to me because that's when the first Starbucks store opened in Charlottesville.
Got it.
That was the beginning of a big influx of competition. You know, you mentioned Dave was on there. Dave and his company have been around for a long time too, and he'll probably know some of the same stories I'm describing. But Starbucks came in 2001. Their store on North 29 was the first store into the marketplace. I think they now have 8 or 9 stores throughout the market. And as you and I have discussed, there's now just been an explosion of coffee cafes in town. I think we have one of the highest concentrations in the world, I would assume.
Especially for 50,000 people in the city of Charlottesville.
Yeah,
it's
for
ridiculous.
A small market, right? Yeah. So it's an ultra competitive environment, and but from 1992 until 2001, our store was crazy. I always tell the story how we used to change the hinges on the door because they would wear out so much. And it was an interesting time. It was a great time, very successful time. Very difficult to run the business with the flow of customers through the store. It was a challenge every day, a good challenge.
What do you say to the entrepreneurs that are like, I have to be first to market because the first to market has such a huge edge, versus the entrepreneur that says, I don't want to be the first to market because the first to market gets chewed up. It's the ones that are second and third that learn from first to market that have the success. What's your take on that? Because you were first to market and you killed it.
Well, first to Charlottesville market, but not first to the market. I mean, I give a lot of credit to the other people before me, whether the 2 gentlemen I mentioned or Starbucks or Pete's or Caribou or anyone else. I had a lot of people I could emulate and copy to improve my business as well. So I would say I wasn't the guy out front getting the arrows slinged at me. I was the second wave, but first wave to Charlottesville.
That's what I meant, first wave to Charlottesville.
Yeah, so I was first wave into Charlottesville in a sense. That's a great thing, and it was also helpful to be a bigger fish in a smaller market. I mean, you know, the fact that Starbucks didn't open a store until 2001 is because this was a smaller market. So we were able to build our trade and build our business before they showed up.
How did the partnership with UVA manifest itself? I mean, was it that so many students were going to? He at one time, guys, had a location on Elliewood on the corner. He of course has the flagship in Barracks Road, which I remember in 2000. Pretending to study in your coffee shop, but really I was looking at the cute baristas behind the bar, okay? So I remember in 2000 coming to your coffee shop and being touched by your brand. So, I mean, how did the UVA partnership manifest itself?
Well, it really comes back to John Castine, president several generations ago.
Great guy.
And became a good friend of ours. He was a coffee connoisseur, and unbeknownst to us, he had been a customer in our store in the very beginning. He loved a good cup of coffee. He loved the European model and that kind of stuff. So without us even knowing, John Castine was a customer of Greenberrys.
That's so cool.
It is. Yeah. But then what happened was John, I remember vividly the meeting in our store in Barracks Road. John set up a meeting with his number 2 person at the time, and he brought the Aramark team in who was running the food service for them at the time.
Still does, right?
Still does, yeah.
Yeah.
And brought them to the table, and John basically said to the Aramark team, we need to find a way to bring this man's business to UVA.
It's awesome.
And it worked. And it was actually groundbreaking because the first stores went into Alderman Library. That was a big deal. It was kind of an experiment. The people in the library wanted to enhance their appeal to the student base and make the library more of a community gathering place, and I think that was a big success.
Well, and on top of that, it makes good money for them.
It does, yeah. It's been a financial success for everyone there. And it was, the librarians were telling me at the time, it was one of the first times across the country that a coffee shop had been put in a big library like that.
And my experience from that, Sean, is it turned the library from a place you regretted going to turning the library to a place you wanted to go, and you ended up hanging out and chilling with people there.
Yes.
And it was because of the coffee.
Well, it was, but it goes
It's
back.
a cool cafe.
It is, it is. But it goes back to what I said, too. The library wanted a place where faculty, professors, and students could come together and talk about world events or solving world problems in a much less formal environment.
Yeah, approachable.
Yeah.
And that's what a coffee shop is.
It is. That's exactly what it is. And that's why that's been such a huge success all these years.
With the UVA partnership, how do you put in perspective how that's impacted the ridiculous success of the brand? Because here's how I see it, and you know more about this than I do. UVA has students in there that are you're talking top 1% of academics going to UVA undergrad.
Absolutely.
So the best of the best.
Yep.
And then we're matriculating from UVA after 4 years being fueled and touched by your brand. We fall in love with it, either stay in the community like I did or go somewhere else. How does that UVA ecosystem and what's happened with UVA and students touching the brand, how does that impacted your company?
Yeah. Well, it actually brings up another fun story that I like to tell, which is we've opened stores in all kinds of places around the world. And to date, and we haven't broken this trend yet, every time we've opened a Greenberrys anywhere in the world, whether it was Osaka, Japan, or Riyadh, I'm just picking the more faraway places, on opening day, we've always had a UVA grad show up.
No way.
100% of the time.
In Japan?
In Japan. Actually, in Japan, I wish I could remember her name, a very nice woman that is the head of the Commerce Department, our federal Commerce Department, who has an office in Osaka, shows up on opening day wearing her UVA sweater.
That's so awesome.
So it was great. But back to your point, which is, and I realized this several years into it, that UVA was one of the best marketing tools we've ever had. Because you're right, every year they're graduating how many students that are exposed to the brand?
With the grad school, maybe 20,000 or so?
Right. Yeah. So they're shipping out that many people that know my brand all over the world.
Market leader, top, smartest people out there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a great marketing tool that didn't cost me any money.
With the partnership with UVA here, they're strategically positioned around grounds. How is that done? How is that picked out? Is it just we want one here because we see people congregating? My favorite one is the one you have in Clark Hall, which seems to be a converted closet, 250 square feet. That's killing it with the engineering and science department.
It is.
I mean, how did that happen?
Well, UVA is like any other real estate development in a sense. It's a competitive environment. Aramark has to manage the retail food environment there, and that's done in coordination with what the university wants. So they are constantly having meetings and discussions about what to put where. So it's a competitive environment. You have to fight for your space there. It works.
How difficult was it for you to take that first new market, that new coffee shop at a new location, where you did it from the franchising standpoint? No longer you guys controlling the brand, the look, the feel, the interaction with the customers, letting other folks tell the story about Greenberrys. Yeah. What was the first one? How hard was it? Why go about doing this? Did you see opportunity?
Well, the first one was actually an extension of the company, which was our store in McLean, Virginia, because we had already opened that store as a company store, and it then sold into a franchise environment. So with my background at Subway, we were very comfortable with franchising and licensing. So franchising, the concept was not part of the 1992 business plan. It came later. But we had decided that it was a way we wanted to grow. And I say franchising, but it's also strategic licensing agreements as well. Mm-hmm. There's a variety of ways to do it. But it works very well, and we enjoy the franchisees that we have in our system. Over the years, you have all different types of people you meet, and it can be challenging at times. I mean, some days I wake up and say we're spending a lot of time protecting franchisees from their own mistakes, but that's what a franchisor does. Our job is to
leverage your experience to help facilitate their success.
Help them be successful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's what franchisors have to understand. I've talked to a lot of young entrepreneurs that want to franchise their business, and I luckily have talked a number of them out of it.
I was going to ask you about that.
It is, you talked about roasting and cafes being different businesses.
This is another business altogether.
Franchising is a completely different business,
right.
And so many people that want to franchise don't understand how different it is and what the tenets of success are.
Well, and they don't understand things because we, as an ad agency, we have a lot of folks coming across our shop wanting to do this. They don't even understand the magnitude of the cost of the legal documents.
Sure.
I mean, the legalese, the legal documents themselves, I mean, you don't have to give us an exact number. I mean, we're talking six figures here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's something that we're like, putting the cart before the horse with a lot of folks. You obviously have done it well. What were some of the ones that have been, done well? Harrisonburg has been done well.
Sure.
All of them are done well. Wesley in D.C. is doing a really good one. Let's put some of them in the spotlight.
No, he is. And actually all of those are, and they're very different people in different environments, but they're achieving the same result, which is to create that community gathering place in their stores, and have people feel comfortable with that. And whereas Wesley is 2 blocks from the White House in a very urban environment with lots of people that work for the government, but they still seek the same types of atmosphere and the same types of activities that go on versus, the Harrisonburg store is very similar to Charlottesville, a college town. JMU's grown like crazy. And so the people that run the Harrisonburg store are family, husband-wife team, just like Roxanne and I are. And so everybody's great, everybody's different, but they're all doing it the right ways, and it works really well.
And it seems like you have a footprint for each market. Like there's varying sizes of your stores that can fit varying sizes and needs.
That's true. Yeah, it's another topic that we sometimes talk about is domestic versus international, and yeah, what we actually did, and this is where a lot of people in my industry ran into some difficulties, is Starbucks was a very dominant force from, I'd say, 1999 till about 2008 or 2009.
Right.
I mean, they owned the coffee business in the world. They were so aggressive with their growth and development that anyone else that tried to go up against them couldn't. And it was things like real estate acquisition. You try to find a place to put a store in a market. The biggest problem I had early on trying to grow our brand was to find landlords that would do a deal with us because they all wanted Starbucks. And if there was a deal available, it's because Starbucks didn't want it, which means it probably wasn't the best real estate. And that's one of the challenges that every company in my industry ran into was during that period of time I'm describing, the companies that grew aggressively were growing on substandard real estate, and were growing, in a sense, on a house of cards. They didn't have a strong foundation. And a lot of those companies are gone now. And I'm very thankful that during that time, we did not grow aggressively. And it's funny, one of the biggest questions I get asked over and over is, well, why doesn't Greenberrys have more stores domestically than we do? And I think the main reason is we were not dormant, but we were quiet.
You were strategic.
Yeah, we saw the power and the force of Starbucks, and we didn't want to make a mistake by growing aggressively on something that was shaky. And it was a time where it was a good decision for us to make.
Well, with their strategy, it seems to be just proliferate the market with as many locations as possible and hope you win the commodity game. Well, and I don't feel like that's a good long-term strategy because if you make it a commodity, people aren't going to have loyalty to commodities.
Well, I think there's 2 stories about Starbucks that are important, and you touched on the second one. But the first one is, which is something that's very exciting to me in business that doesn't happen very often, which is Starbucks became a cult. They had a cult-like following, and I say that in a very positive way. Apple is another company,
sure.
Identical.
Yeah.
Customers had such a strong attachment to the brand that they could have served anything. It almost didn't matter. And how that's created is something I'm sure the folks at Darden can study all day long. But when it happens, it's explosive. The growth is tremendous. And that's what Starbucks enjoyed. They had this tremendous cult-like following. Their customers just adored Starbucks. It was like religion to them. And that meant Starbucks could literally put stores anywhere, and people were going to flock to them. And there's other brands, I'm sure, Nike's probably done it, and there's a variety of other brands that have become huge because they've captured that powerful essence that can occur in business. It's like a supernova.
Sure.
It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's huge.
Yeah.
And
Tom Shoes is another one.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So that happens, and those of us that are on the other side wishing it would happen are scratching our
How
heads.
can we
saying,
bottle that up and apply it to us?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it happens, and so that happened with Starbucks, and that supernova for them was so strong that it really scared the rest of us away. And anyone that tried to go up against it, it's probably like driving a spaceship into a supernova. It doesn't end well. So that was phase one, and that's why really we didn't grow aggressively during that period of time. And I'm very thankful. We had a small number of quality stores and a roasting facility that were doing great. We didn't have debt. We didn't have issues. We were very happy. And I'm glad we did it that way. And a lot of my counterparts ran up against it the other way.
Why go to the international route? When did you start thinking this is a brand that can work globally? I mean, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Japan. I mean, these are big-time markets here. These are new countries.
Like so many things happen in business, luck and happenstance. I was thinking about ways for us to grow. I was starting to think that the time to grow was coming upon us because I saw Starbucks was slowing in terms of their growth, and even their cachet was starting to wane a bit. So we already had the mindset of, okay, it's time to come out of our shell and start looking for some growth opportunities. At the same time, I just happened to have met a gentleman who is an international business broker, and had some conversations with him, and I was really exposed to something I wasn't very aware of, which is how domestic U.S. brands are brought to the international marketplace. So he educated me on that, and we stuck our toe in the water. And early on, after sticking our toe in the water, we were able to actually land a deal in Japan and Saudi Arabia, of all places, which was exciting. And I went into it with this idea of, A, I hope we don't lose money. B, I think it's going to be a great opportunity because we're going to go places we've never been.
Of course.
And meet people that we've never met and experience cultures we've never experienced. So it had a lot of positives to it, and I had calculated that I didn't think it was a huge risk factor monetarily. So we signed the deals, and away we went. And we've learned some things, but it's been a big success for us. And I see it as a huge continuing opportunity for us going forward. We're right now actively marketing and signing deals in about 12 different countries.
It's so awesome. And now you're an international businessman, and you're an international businessman, legitimately an international businessman. I mean, how much does your personality or your mindset or your sense of diplomacy have to change when dealing with folks from different countries? Like, I can't even understand this part of the business, Sean.
Well, it's...
Like, do you change? Are you like, it's called code switching, I think, in psychology, when you're like talking with different people, you act different ways. Do you have to do that?
Well, I never change who I am.
Okay.
I want to be a likable fellow. That's my goal in life. So I don't change who I am, but you do have to grasp and understand the culture of business in different countries. And I will say, we chose two extreme examples, which I actually think accelerated our learning curve because they were so different. A good example, in the Japanese marketplace, Japan was never on my list of countries that I wanted to go to. It is now in my top 2 or 3 places that I want to go back to over and over again. It is an amazing culture, an amazing place to visit. First of all, it's a monoculture. America is based upon immigration. We're all from different places and mixed up and this, that, and the other thing. Japan doesn't have that kind of immigration history. You go to Tokyo and it's everyone's Japanese. So just from that standpoint alone, a very different environment and culture. But back to the business thing, Japanese business people, there are similarities, but there are some big differences too. And you have to understand them to understand how your business partners across the table are thinking about things, because it can be different. I mean,
Is it come down like differences with like negotiations and how you go about like just to getting a deal done? Is it like from a time standpoint? Put it in perspective for us.
Yeah. Some.
I'm very curious about this.
Well, a couple examples. For the Japanese, we always say the term saving face. The way you present yourself in Japan is extremely important.
Okay.
So
you wear a suit there?
Oh, yes.
In Japan? Because you're not a suit guy. Is that fair? Is that safe to say?
Suit and tie. Suit and tie.
Because you're a casual guy.
But I'm being respectful to their culture.
Interesting.
You have to be.
Is that the only place where you wear the suit and tie?
Actually, I did in Saudi Arabia too.
You did?
So but those are for those are for things like, I wouldn't wear it to just a meeting with my partners, but if we're doing an opening or something like that, you obviously dress up. So, but I still wear, I may wear a suit without a tie. But you want to be respectful to their environment. Just like it's fun when I host the Japanese here, they want to wear suits and ties, and I tell them Charlottesville's a casual college town. Just come casual, and they struggle a little bit of what I mean by casual, and we've occasionally had to send them pictures to say this is what we mean, and they enjoy that kind of winding down.
I love that.
Yeah, but the Japanese, what make them such great partners for me is in Japanese culture, and I really appreciate this. To me, they wake up every day wanting to perfect what they do. They very much want to do things well. And that works well in a franchise relationship because they take my concept, my ideas, my way of doing things, and they want to do them to the best of their ability. And what better partner could you have? They're not as entrepreneurial in a sense. They don't want to change my system.
Well, that's why the franchise model works great for you if they're not as entrepreneurial, because they're going to take your playbook and follow it.
That's precisely
Sometimes
right.
the entrepreneur is not what you want as a franchisee.
The first thing you learn in franchising is a true entrepreneur is not the person you want to franchise
because they want to change everything.
They will question and change everything you do.
Right,
yeah.
right.
And I have had those types of people in our system. And
Did you pull your hair out?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Sometimes.
Really, what you want in that model is you want the number two person to the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
The number two person.
Yeah, the operational person.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, that's very true.
That's the one that would kill it.
Yeah, that's very true. And a few other small topics on Japan. One is Japan is very process driven. A lot of people are worried, how do you import into Japan? They're so strict and everything. But again, the good thing about Japan is they clearly tell you exactly what the process is. As long as you do steps A through Z correctly, you get the outcome you expect. Switch gears to a place like Saudi Arabia. Couldn't be more different. Still a great place to be successful and have business, but their culture is very different. There, you still have a monoculture, but the working people in Saudi Arabia tend to be brought in from other countries. So you have kind of a working class environment versus the Saudi nationals. So that's one change that's very different. Number two, the pace of business in the Middle East tends to be slower.
Really?
It's more bureaucratic, it's slower, there's more steps involved. And with them, unlike the Japanese, oftentimes you're not told what all the steps are, and you find out as you go. So there's more twists and turns and challenges to it.
Do you, with servicing the business, the international expansion of the business, are you thinking about an international roasting facility? I mean, how is the coffee sent to the international locations? And then the second part of the question is the next step an international roasting facility?
Yeah. We found throwing it in the belly of United Airlines flights is the way we get
That's
it
awesome.
to most places. We truck it up to Dulles Airport and put it in an airplane. And air cargo, if you play the game right, doesn't have to be that expensive. So we mostly, and that gets it there in 2 to 3 days.
Really?
And it's fresh and it works very well. So that's what we do. Things like ocean freight don't work because it takes too long, and it's a challenge. So that part of it's pretty easy. International roasting facility, if we ended up having a concentration of stores that warranted doing it at some point, we would do it. But it would be under my ownership and my control.
Would you ever license or franchise the roasting facility?
It would stay under our control.
It would. Yeah. It would. Awesome. I can see that happening, because why I could see that happening, and this is down the road. One of my questions is, what's the next 25 years look like for Greenberrys? I mean, if you have a bunch of locations open in one spot, you, the entrepreneur, and you seeing opportunity, that would be the next step, because you've already perfected the roasting facility here.
Yeah.
You could just take the same system and apply it there.
Yeah, it's very easy to make it modular and move it to different
Right.
countries. So yeah, again, if we're fortunate enough that we have a large enough concentration to do it, and we are right now focusing on some European countries and things where it might make more geographic sense to do something like that. So we'll see. I mean, we're still in the sales mode right now. We're still, I like to jokingly say, selling the world. We've got a lot of countries on our list where we want to move Greenberrys into. So we've got to get those deals done and get those stores open, and then the supply chain stuff is easier decisions to make after that.
There you go. Sean Simmons, our guest. You've already filled 45 minutes. Let's thank some folks for joining us here. Ray Cadell, thank you for joining us. Bobby Castine, Tyler Berry, April Marshall, Roger Crawdaddy Crawford, Josephine Humphrey, Bob Shada, Tracy Meat. Lot of people watching here. Let me throw this to you here. What about the Costco deal? You have and I believe you added Costco locations. You started with a wholesale deal in Costco. I saw one of your team members, Julia, giving samples in the Costco Charlottesville.
Right. Yep.
And the line was like, there was like 12 people there.
Right.
And we went, we had some coffee, we purchased a bag as well. How does that come about?
Well, it's kind of an extension of what, again, you mentioned some of the other folks in Charlottesville that are doing this. If you go into Whole Foods, you're going to see Shendo Joe, Traeger Brothers. There's a lot of local roasters in town. Everybody's doing a great job. And you'll see a lot of the grocery stores will carry multiple brands. We learned Costco's an interesting animal. They're a very much more complex company to deal with the requirements and stuff. But not unlike most businesses today, they're looking for the local products to mix in with their national product lines. And so Costco was looking for something like that. And again, through just a relationship I had, we had the right meetings and stuff. And there was an internal battle, too, in Greenberrys about this because there were some people in the company that were concerned, well, is Costco the place for the brand to be? Because we try to pitch ourselves as this high-end brand, and we're local, and what does Costco mean?
Which is a fair question.
It is, but I kept saying to the team, but at the end of the day, we are in business to sell coffee.
Right.
We have a willing participant here. We are selling the coffee to a local crowd. We weren't trying to put them in Costco's in California. So I said, let's try it. And we actually created some packaging that differentiated us a little bit from our retail. So it was part of the family, but a new part of the family. So far it's been well received. The Costco consumers are very pleased with the product. We're now in somewhere between 8 to 10 Costco's and growing.
8 to 10, wow. Is there advice that you give? We have a lot of folks that want to get to your level of success in business that are watching. What's the advice you give to folks that have a retail product that want to get it in grocery stores, Whole Foods, and Costco's? A lot of folks don't even know how to go about doing that.
It is hard. I mean, one of the things a lot of people in business talk about is barriers to entry.
Right.
And if you're a good business person, you like to be in a business that has high barriers to entry. And each one, whether it's Whole Foods or Kroger or Costco, each one of them has a different barrier to entry. Costco is very difficult to get into. Your plant and the certifications that you have to have are very high. It's a lot of work. It took us 6 months of work just to get our facilities and our ducks in a row.
And I think that's something we should highlight. He just said 6 months of not just work. You're talking about paid manpower.
Yes.
6 months of paid manpower.
And consultancy, too.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And outside consultancy, just to get to that point.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's so, Costco's not the place you start with because it's expensive and difficult to get into. And the other challenge with businesses like Costco is you can have a great business today, but one decision tomorrow and you can be gone. So, and one thing I really appreciate about Costco, I really want to give them some kudos, is Costco has a policy when they're doing business with small businesses is they don't ever want to be more than 20% of your portfolio. They don't want to be your big fish because they know that if they decide to take your line out, they don't want to ruin your business. You don't see that a lot in big business, and I like that they're willing to actually consider the health of my business too.
So if someone's trying to climb the retail ladder and get their product in retail, you start with the small local grocery?
Yeah,
you can get face-to-face with the owner or the manager on site that makes the call.
And again, bringing it full circle back to the Honda Civic, that's how we started. We were selling to individual, independent restaurant owners. It was something we could control, we could handle, we could provide that level of service we wanted to. So that's a great place to start. You've got to work the kinks out. Whatever your business is, whatever you're selling, it's someone in politics said it's the unknown unknowns. The things you can't contemplate are going to happen. You got to figure those out.
You're crushing it today, and we're almost done. I mean, 50 minutes has gone by very quickly here. What do you say to the entrepreneurs that are so focused on their model that they're afraid to pivot or change or do new things? Where I'm going with this is, you do new things all the time. You're not afraid to fail. And if it doesn't work, you stop doing it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times folks are saying like, that makes you distracted. If you're a jack of all trades, you're a master of none.
Yeah.
What's your perspective?
Well, you did touch on, you can't be afraid in business like this because fear will paralyze you. It is also, sometimes it's an age thing. It's human nature to not want to change, but that grows as you get older. It's probably harder for me to do new things now than it was 20 years ago. But
you got more to lose.
You have more to lose, but it's just the human brain. It's just human animal. As we get older, we want our universe to be more consistent and the same, I think. So that's part of it.
Totally true.
It is. I mean, at 53, I can say that now. But
I'm taking a lot less risk now that I have a wife and kid than when I was on my own.
True. Absolutely.
You're totally right.
Absolutely. But even as you get older too, but it goes back to passion too. If you love what you do, and I like to say this, I've been doing the same thing for 27 years. I still wake up almost every day loving to go to work. So I live a good life, and I'm very fortunate, and that's luck that I get to do that. So if you're in that part of the world, then you're way ahead, and that's fantastic. You need to love what you do.
Well, and a testament to you, you've built this. I mean, it is lucky and you're fortunate, but you've determined your fortune.
Well, again, I'm going to share the benefits. It was the team that built it. It's never just me. It's Roxanne has been steadfast in the business, and Roxanne is a huge part of the business.
I think we need to talk about her now. I mean, because the show's winding down. Roxanne is his beautiful, intelligent wife, his business partner.
Yeah, well, and she's the boss.
She is a dynamo. I have been in meetings with Roxanne. She has an eye for design. She was in the beginning distributing the coffee in the Civic.
Right.
She was behind the counter in the beginning. I mean, she's instrumental here.
Well, and Roxanne, she came over to this country. She's Ukrainian. She came over to this country.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she came over. She was living in Poland. Literally, her parents told her the night before to pack the suitcase. They got on a plane, and they came to America, and they never went back. Because they were leaving communist Poland at the time. So my wife is a first-generation immigrant coming from a communist country. And so Roxanne has a drive from that background. Roxanne wants to succeed. She loves being an American. I mean, she's living the American dream, and that's a tremendous story in and of itself. But Roxanne and I have another benefit. It's rare for people to have a long marriage anymore. It's rare,
especially if they work together.
That was my next point. Yeah. It's rare for people to also be able to work together, and we do all of those things very well.
You guys are best friends.
We are. Well, someone asked me the other day, I met this nice French lady on a trip recently, and she clearly had just come off a bad relationship. She's like, well, how do you and Roxanne do it? And I said, I married my best friend. And it's easy after that. So, but the other thing that helps is Roxanne and I are similar, but also very different.
Totally.
And because of that, we're able to carve out our own space to contribute to the success of Greenberrys.
You're complementary in your skill sets.
We are. Roxanne really sweats details. Every little thing has to be right.
And your big picture.
More so.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny, you become each other over time. I now sweat details more than I used to. But we were very fortunate that our personalities interlock like that and provide to the success of the business. The other thing is, we chose not to have children. We treat Greenberrys as our child.
Yeah, it's your child.
And we've raised it. So I always like to say, in 1992, it was an infant. It needed all of our care. 27 years later, it's an adult. I still have to...
Love that analogy.
Yeah, I still have to tend to it and make sure it's okay. But right now, I'm trying to help it grow its family internationally.
I look at I Love CVille as my firstborn, who's 10 years old, and he's figuring things out.
Yep.
And then I have a second kid at home that really has not figured it out. I mean, let me throw this to you about Roxanne here. The entrepreneurs that are watching, do you tell them to start a business with their wife or their husband or their partner? Or do you tough question for you.
It is, because I think when you tend to be younger, and you're younger in your relationship and you're younger in your business, you don't know everything yet. And you don't know. I've seen businesses where husbands and wives, the business tears them apart. And I've seen businesses where it's better because of them. So I don't think I'd give that advice. It's probably too personal on each individual basis.
Sometimes I work, you remember those days when you were clocking 70, 80 hours a week. Sure. And sometimes during those workloads, the time I see my wife is in the business.
Yeah.
That's like when I see her.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way.
And I'm not sure that's necessarily healthy. But, so you would say it depends on the relationship.
It does. Yeah. And I actually will say, Roxanne and I live another part of our life, which is we want to do everything in our power to live a happy, balanced life. And that is hard sometimes as an entrepreneur, but I think you should put your relationship first before the business. I mean, something's got to pay the bills. I get that.
Sure.
But put your relationship first, and everything else will follow.
When she was she oftentimes the front when people walked into the store, they would see her?
No, actually, she's more bashful than I am.
Yeah, so you were there?
Yeah, it was more me.
Yeah, how was that like for you?
I enjoy it. I mean, I like people.
Because you just like talking to people.
I don't have trouble with that. Yeah. No, that's just a personality thing. And Roxanne loves to talk to people, and she has a way with our staff in particular that I could never achieve. She's very sweet and warm and nice.
Very sincere.
But she's a little camera shy. I don't know if you'll see her on this show, but she doesn't want to be out in front per se. She's very humble, which we both try to be.
Yeah. We have about 6 minutes left here. The next 25 years for Greenberrys. You've passed the 25-year anniversary. 27 coming up.
Yeah.
Next 25 years.
I've been thinking a lot about this lately because we're in a very interesting place in America right now, and this would be a whole other show. But if I just focus even on my business world right now, retail is changing so dramatically with Amazon and online purchasing. I remember it being a tenant in Barracks Road. If you went back 25 years ago, the shopping craziness in Barracks Road was insane. You couldn't get a parking place within 10 miles. Go there now.
There's vacancies.
There's vacancies. There is the street retail Christmas rush is all but dead. Mm-hmm. So a lot of things are changing in the retail world. And there's also, when you're leasing spaces and stuff, bricks and mortar retailers are not opening stores anymore. People sell clothing, stuff like that, kitchenwares, whatever. So you're seeing more and more vacancy in shopping centers, and that vacancy is being filled by, as my real estate guys like to say, the lifestyle brands or food and beverage.
Right.
So Charlottesville is going from a town, and I'm only focused on Charlottesville, that's going from a town that already had a huge number of restaurants to exponentially growing more restaurants because those are the only people leasing space anymore. So locally, I think we're all feeling the pinch of oversaturation of lifestyle services and restaurants of any kind. So that's a challenging business environment, and I suspect anyone that's watching the show today that's in the restaurant business is seeing that right now.
He's basically saying there's too many restaurants and not enough slices of the pie for the restaurateurs, and he's 100% right.
I don't talk to my counterparts much. I know you do more than I do, but I think that we are in
Everyone is saying that.
There is going to be some kind of a slow, painful shakeout that comes from this, because you're continuing to have the landlords that have got to fill their shopping centers. They got to lease spaces for their business model. The only people they can lease to are more food vendors, and there's never a shortage of people that think they can run a restaurant. So this is going to, I think, crash into itself at some point, and there's going to be some carnage from it.
What do you say to this intrigues me. What do you say to the folks that say a lot of restaurants is great for the consumer because it gives them options, and the best will rise to the top and the worst will wither away?
I think that's always true in any business, and whether it's now or 25 or 50 years ago, the best should rise to the top and survive. That's a good thing. That's Darwin's theory of business.
Sure.
So it makes sense. But again, what I moved to Charlottesville for is we're a small town, and we know each other, and we've had a lot of growth. I'm not sure all that growth has been good for town, but every time, if you have too many restaurants, if a local restaurant closes in Charlottesville, a local family has been put out. All of the employees of that restaurant that are going to be local people are put out. So I don't want to see too much churning, too much carnage, new ones opening, because that's very disruptive to the people that live here. So I would rather see less but more health. A healthier group of restaurants that are doing well. I don't want to see too much churning. There's always new and old because trends change.
Right, of course.
But
well, what do you say to the landlord then? Federal Realty is a publicly traded company, and they have to fill those vacancies to please their stockholders. What do you say to the landlords who's like, these are the only folks that will come?
Well, what I think you'll see is they have to change their business model. We talked about changing and pivoting. What they're going to have to do is take shopping centers like Barracks Road, and eventually I think they'll make them more what they call the lifestyle
center. Yeah, like Short Pump.
Where you live, shop, and work in the same facility.
What they're trying to do at Stonefield.
Yes.
But that was not executed well.
No, and as some will do it well, some won't. But I think that's the long-term play for those folks.
I totally agree with you.
Because they have these really expensive properties that are right now 100% retail-oriented, and they're going to not be able to lease that space out.
And I think when that happens, Sean, that's going to be great for you. Because you're the coffee shop right there that's going to service the live, work, play customer.
I don't think, we had this conversation this morning, I don't think the coffee cafe as a concept is going to grow stale or go away.
I agree.
But
because it's about the experience that you can only find at that place. What will go away is the Lululemon pants that you can buy online from Amazon and get in 2 days on your front porch.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, that's going away.
Yeah. You can't buy the coffee shop experience. But the challenge is to convert a Barracks Road Shopping Center to a lifestyle center is a huge capital investment and entirely disruptive. They have to tear the shopping center down and start over.
Right.
So you wipe out all the businesses that are there to rebuild something brand new. So it's very disruptive. It's very difficult to go through it. And I think that's why they will delay doing those types of things as long as they can.
Possible. You're totally right.
But what you're also seeing is, and I don't know the local development scene as much as you do, but the fact of the matter is any new developments coming out of the ground will most likely be the lifestyle centers.
Sure. And the new developments, when they're building them, they're actually planning the coffee shop in the early
center
phases.
of it.
Yeah, in the center. You're totally right. So what was the, that's 2 questions left. We're almost done here. You killed it. The 25 years. Where do you see it in 25 years? Your brand, the Greenberrys brand.
Gosh, how old?
Because at that point, how old? I mean, 70s?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. I mean, you're still going to be young and kicking. I mean,
of course,
70s is like the new 50s. Yeah, that's what they say.
Exactly. The other thing I've learned from some very wise business people is you're lucky if you can plan 5 years out. So I honestly can't give you a 25-year perspective. If I did, I'd be lying and making it up. So I think the best thing you can have any sense of control over is the next 5 years. So for the next 5 years for us, we will continue to do what we've always done in Charlottesville. But I think you're going to see for us to continue to really focus on international expansion. There's still a lot of legs there. And domestically too. I mean, actually, now that Starbucks is not aggressively growing anymore, I'm advertising in 49 of the 50 states.
That's awesome.
And we're getting a lot of traction. We signed a deal for Portland, Oregon.
That's serious.
We're going into the belly of the beast.
Yeah,
there
I was
for coffee.
say.
But I've got a great franchisee there. They're going to open up 3 to 5 stores in Portland.
Really? How does that happen? How does a deal like that happen?
Again, it's brokerage. I'm advertising through a specific company for franchisees in 49 states. California's the only one we're not going into. Most people that join a company like mine are people that are mid-life changing careers. And that's what this opportunity was. And those are great people for us because they're mature, they have business experience, and they will now want to do something new and different. But they don't want to take such a big risk by starting something from scratch.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They want to do something on their own, call it their own, but there's a system and a company behind it.
Yeah, because you've done most of the hard work. And now you're giving them the playbook for success. I love it. Okay, 90 seconds left here. We close the same way with everybody on the show. Charlottesville, Virginia, you've been here 27 years?
Actually, almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years.
Yeah.
So you've seen a freaking ton of change.
Yes, I have.
Charlottesville, Virginia, better place in your eyes? Worse place? Where are we at? From when you first arrived almost 30 years ago.
I answer this question by the understanding of why I came to Charlottesville. I came to Charlottesville because I wanted to live in a small town where everybody knew each other and to escape big city issues, traffic and stuff like that. So by that measure alone, I would say I don't think Charlottesville is as good as it was 25 years ago. Okay. Our traffic is worse. We're cramming more people from all over the place into a small community that really I don't think is designed for it. So I'm not going to be negative.
That's all true, what you said.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be negative on Charlottesville because since I do have the ability to travel all over the world, I can say every time I come home to Charlottesville, I still say what a wonderful place it is to live.
That's awesome. And why is that?
Well, it's it depends what you want to compare it to, but it still is physical beauty. It's a gorgeous place. I mean, our weather is gorgeous. Even though we complain about it, we have 4 beautiful seasons here. Go live in Riyadh for 6 months and see how hot it is. So it's a beautiful place to live. I love the culture here. It is still a small town, even though I call it a mid-sized town now. And we still benefit. We don't have, even though we have more crime, we don't have high crime. Traffic's the one that bothers me the most.
Yeah, traffic is ridiculous.
Traffic is tough.
5:30 p.m. leaving here on the downtown mall. That's why we changed our hours 10 to 6:30. Now we don't deal with the traffic.
Yeah.
But you killed it. We filled an hour. It feels like it's 10 minutes. His name is Sean Simmons. He and his wife, Roxanne, started Greenberrys Coffee, guys, in 1992 here in Charlottesville. It is now a global brand. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Japan. He's creating jobs. He's fueling people with his coffee. And it's Charlottesville's longest-running coffee roasters. It's Greenberrys Coffee Company. Tomorrow, we have the owner and the entrepreneur of Iron Poffles. She started a new category, the Poffle, here in Charlottesville. And then on Friday, Kathy Galvin, who is a Charlottesville City Councilor. We're going to sit here and talk current events with her. The mayor is going to join us in 2019. Thank you.
Thank you.
For your time. You killed it. You made us look good. We will see you tomorrow, 12:30, with Catherine Matthews, the owner and CEO of Iron Poffles, on the I Love CVille show. You guys be good to each other.
Hey, good.
So easy.
Good.
So here's the next step here. You're closing the show out, my friend. He's going to take a picture of us. It's the promo picture that we're going to feature here.
Okay, good.
And then for a 3-week period of time, this will be syndicated across the network. We'll get feedback on this.
I think Julia was watching.
Julia's right there.
Yeah.
She
Did
was
anyone
watching.
ask any questions? Or no?
Nope. No, we got somebody that said hello. Bob, shout out. These two guys know you. They said hi.